Hi everyone, welcome back to the next diecast. In today's video, I'll be showing you and reviewing this 1/18 scale 1974 Chevrolet C10 Cheyenne Super made by Maisto, or Maisto depending on how you like to pronounce their name. I got this model from Sam's Club for around $20 in total. Thought that was a fantastic deal. And that is the typical price that you can find these Maisto 1/18 scale models for at various wholesale clubs. BJ's, Costco, and of course Sam's Club here in the United States. And this is a recent release from Maisto for 2025. Currently, you can find it in this really awesome blue and white version with the black interior, along with a red and white version with the same black interior. And you can, of course, find this model online as well for various prices, usually between, I would say, around like $30 and $50, depending on which site you are looking at. I think it is great to see that Maisto has released another pickup truck model in their 1/18 scale line. They don't frequently release models of SUVs or trucks in their 1/18 scale line. And when they do, they're oftentimes underscaled. But this one seems like it is true 1/18 scale. If you saw my unboxing video, I did check the base, and it does say scale 1/18, which is great to see. And seeing how this looked pretty big inside of the box, I assume that this is in fact true 1/18 scale, or very close to being true 1/18 scale, which is great to see. Maisto did release a model of the 1979 Ford F-150 back around 2022 or 2023, and that one was actually 1/20th scale instead of, true 1/18 scale. But it looks like this Chevrolet C10 is true 1/18 scale. So the 1974 Chevrolet C10 Cheyenne Super, which is quite a mouthful of a name, was part of the Chevrolet/GMC CK series of trucks. And the third generation of the Chevrolet/GMC CK series was produced between 1973 and 1991. And the square body pickups are what these are more well known as. And you can tell because this is very, boxy and square-like from various angles when you look at it. So that's how it got the square body name. At least as far as the Chevrolet version of the CK series went. The C10 Cheyenne Super was kind of a higher level trim that you could get of this truck model. And of course, both the Chevy and GMC versions came in, various body styles and like bed styles and whatnot. But the C10 Cheyenne Super was kind of a higher end trim. It came with a choice of different V8 motors. I believe this Maisto replica is modeled after the 454 cubic inch V8, if I'm not mistaken on that. And of course, the truck in real life had various other, upper end features, like it had some wood grain on the dashboard, different options that you couldn't get on the other models. It did have, I think, the automatic transmission option along with like power steering and brakes and things like that. And of course, it came in various cool color choices like this blue. And I have seen pictures of the real life C10 Cheyenne in this blue and white paint scheme, and it just looks really good. And the red and white paint scheme, I think, looks great as well. But I think, in general, Maisto did do a pretty good job with this replica, although I think there are definitely some aspects of this truck that can be improved upon, or at least tweaked a little bit. But I will, of course, talk about that in my review of this model here. So I would say Maisto did an overall good job with capturing the look and shape of this truck. Again, this generation of Chevrolet and GMC trucks was quite iconic. I think the square body is definitely among the favorites of the Chevrolet/GMC CK series. I know a lot of people were very happy to see that Maisto released their own 1/18 scale replica of the square body Chevy pickup. I think some, angles could be tweaked a slight bit, but this is a budget grade model. So I think as long as you absolutely can recognize this as a square body Chevy, which you certainly can, Maisto did do a solid job. So I am happy to see that Maisto really nailed the overall look and shape of this truck for sure. In the front here, Maisto, I think, did a good job with these headlights and the indicator lights. There actually aren't pegs to be seen, which is interesting because a lot of times in Maisto's previous releases, there would be like an obvious like black glue peg either kind of in the dead center of a headlight or kind of like tucked away in the corner. But on this C10 Cheyenne, you don't really see that. And they also put on these indicator lights as separately cast pieces of plastic. A lot of times Maisto will instead paint these lights on, but on here they actually put them on as separately cast pieces of plastic, which is cool to see. Now, the center grille does look a little bit cheap, and it does not look very accurate compared to the real truck because this is entirely in chrome. I think Maisto could have at least maybe painted the insides of the slats so they almost look like they're, hollowed out, but they just instead did kind of one chrome piece on the front here. That being said, it does look good. It doesn't necessarily look accurate to the real life truck's grille. But that being said, that blue Chevrolet badge in the center looks really well done, has kind of a reflective quality to it, which I do like to see. Then you have this 1974 Chevrolet Cheyenne 10 license plate in the front here, which is cool to see. Then you have this plastic chrome bumper, which is nice and sturdy on the model here. Then taking a look at the side, this indicator light, however, which you also have on this fender as well, is painted on and not a separately cast piece of plastic. Would have been nice to see this done as a plastic piece as opposed to just being a painted on component, seeing how Maisto did that with these front lights here. But that being said, these are kind of small and very thin, so I guess it would have been kind of hard for Maisto to replicate it as anything aside from a painted on component. But that being said, from a distance, it does not look all that bad at all. You have the nice Cheyenne Super 10 inscription on this fender here, which of course you would see on the real life truck. And it's nicely embossed on here with that silver paint. And then you also have that very small Chevrolet badge on the pillar back here, which is a cool touch. I think the paint quality on this model is very well done. Maisto definitely has been improving with the paintwork on their models for quite some time now. The paint finish on this C10 is, I would say, very good throughout. Nice and smooth. There's no, rough regions or anything like that. No, scuffs and whatnot. I think it's just an overall very good paint job. And the entire body is made out of die cast as well. For some reason, I thought this roof would be made out of plastic for some reason, because it looks like it's a separately cast piece of plastic because of how the paint is laid out, but this is actually metal, and it is on the rest of the car's body. Same thing with even with like the door frames, they're all metal, so I really do like to see that. Back here, the taillights, I would say, are pretty well done. No pegs to be seen in those as well, similar to the headlights. If this were to have been released like even 10 years ago, you would probably see an obvious peg right here and then also right there. But with these taillights, there are no pegs to be seen. So I really like to see that. Maisto has definitely been improving in that sense as well. Then you got that Chevrolet inscription back here on the tailgate in black. I do like how that pairs up with the white and with the blue too. Very cool. And you also have a similar chrome bumper back here. Has some rivet detail on there as well. The exhaust pipes do look like they're a bit too small and also quite cheap looking because they're all, totally chromed out. I wish Maisto maybe would have painted the insides of them black at least, but again, this is a budget grade model you can find for below, $45 in most cases. So you can't really nitpick too much in that sense. As far as the opening features on this model go, you do of course have the opening tailgate, which opens up like so. A little bit on the stiff side, but I do like to see that because then you know that this is a sturdy fixture. And it's kind of hard to get it to go all the way flat, almost like you're going to break it in a way. So I'd be kind of careful if you're going to be raising and lowering this tailgate. I'm not going to open it or close it that much because eventually it might get a bit too loose and then just kind of fall open, which Maisto's Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon truck models were notorious for doing. Even those, when they were like brand new in the box, the tailgate would just, fall open all the time. But this truck model seems like it has a vastly improved tailgate style. It feels just very tight when you're raising and lowering it. So I hope it stays that way. I guess time will tell. But tailgate, I think, is good quality. I would just be careful with how often you're raising and lowering it. With that in mind, though, the actual bed itself in the truck, I would say, is well done. It is made entirely out of plastic, but I would say it does match up almost perfectly with the blue paint that you see on the blue portions of the model. It does have kind of like a shiny, reflective, glossy quality to it. I'm not really sure how accurate that would be to the real life truck. And the bed itself is not loose or anything like that. On some of Maisto's truck models over the years, because the beds were molded as separately cast pieces of plastic, they would be like a little bit loose and sometimes maybe not like, be too flush with the rest of the vehicle's body. But on here, it's very seamless. I thought this was metal before I actually got the truck out of the box and opened up the tailgate and everything. So I think Maisto really did a good job back here for sure, especially for a budget grade truck model. So then you just close up the tailgate like that. It does kind of click into place a slight bit. So that is nice to see that for sure. As far as the wheels go, I did forget to talk about those. I'd say they look decently done. They do have the Chevrolet badge in the centers, although in the photos that I saw of the real life 1974 Chevrolet C10 Cheyenne Super, the wheels were a little more deep dish looking, like kind of more inset, I guess, if that makes sense. But there could have very well been like various wheel options you could have gotten for this truck. But Maisto's wheels on here are completely chromed out. And I believe that is kind of accurate to what you would see on the various wheel styles of the square body trucks. But I think from a distance, the wheels look quite well done, especially with that Chevrolet badge in the centers of them. And then you also get suspension on the model and full steering as well. Very good steering and suspension too. Maisto has also been improving on that as well. So the wheels, I think, look good. Maybe a little bit more detail would have been welcome. But I think for a budget grade model, the wheels look well done for sure. And then I also forgot to mention the side mirrors and the wipers. These side mirrors look good in this chrome plastic, and they do seem to be nice and sturdy. The wipers, though, do look a bit too small and a bit cheap looking because they're completely chromed out. I think if they were at least a little bit bigger, so they would actually like fill up the whole windshield and not just like, if these actually worked, they would only be wiping like up to here maybe, if that. But at least Maisto includes the wipers on here. Some model manufacturers forego them entirely, which just looks odd in my opinion. But at least on here, Maisto does include the wipers, and they look okay at best. And these side mirrors, once again, look good and are nice and sturdy. But now back to the opening features of the model. You do, of course, have the opening hood on this truck model, which opens up like so. And an issue with my model is that the hood does not really stay all the way up. It does kind of fall shut a slight bit like that. Might just be a factory defect for my model, but just keep that in mind that you might need to have something to hold up your hood if you plan on putting your truck up on the shelf with the hood raised like this. But here is the big block V8 in here. It looks decently done. It's all kind of done in gray and black plastic. So, and there is some depth to it, but aside from that, there really is no like coloring detail in here at all. I think on the real life truck, like the carburetor had some different colors going on. There was some obvious like labels in the engine. And in here you can see kind of the different details with like the various like, pulleys and pipes and everything and like the carburetor and whatnot. But I think a little bit more detail in the sense of more, just color in here would have, I think, been a solid touch for Maisto to have included in here. But that being said, this is, I think, definitely not one of their bad engines that they've done over the years. I just think they could have maybe added some more detail in here as far as, color goes and everything. But aside from that, I mean, the basic engine's look, I think, is pretty accurate compared to what you would see with the real life truck. Of course, there is probably some missing components and everything in here, but again, this truck is a budget grade die-cast model, so you're not going to have like super good detailing in that sense. But I think what Maisto has done in here for the engine is just fine. But I think some more detail would have made this that much better for sure. And I wish the hood actually stayed up. That is kind of unfortunate. Hope it's just a factory defect. Yep. And then it falls almost completely shut. So we'll just close it completely like that, I guess. And then, of course, you have the opening doors on this model as well. They open up on spring-loaded hinges. They don't open up all that wide, but you can at least see a decent amount into the interior of the model. Now, the interior of this model is all black. As you can see here, that isn't necessarily accurate compared to what you would see with the real-life C10 Cheyenne Super, because a lot of the interiors on the C10 Cheyenne Super were different, like two-tone choices and everything like that. And like I said at the beginning of the video, all the C10 Cheyenne Supers came with a wood grain look to the gauge cluster region, which you don't see that here. It's done just in all black. That being said, though, the overall look of the interior, I would say, is pretty spot on to what you would see in the real life C10 Cheyenne Super. Although Maisto didn't do the wood grain look to the gauge cluster, they did do the overall look and shape of the gauge cluster quite well, in terms of like how the gauges are placed and kind of that curved shape that you have behind the steering wheel. Same thing with the radio and the center stack. It's angled towards the driver, as you can see right here. And the buttons aren't really colored in, but you can see that the buttons are in fact there. And as far as the dashboard itself goes, it is the overall correct shape compared to what you would see on the real life truck. You can actually see the outline of the glove box on there as well. And although the interior is all black, there is some different plastic textures going on at least. You have kind of that glossy black band going across the center of the dashboard here. And then you have a decent texture for the seats as well as the door panels. But I wish Maisto maybe included some more color on the interior, or at least colored in some of the buttons a little bit better. But I think for a budget grade interior, this interior is definitely good, but it could be better, I think, for sure. And with that all in mind, the steering wheel, I think, is pretty good compared to what you would see on the real life C10. It is the correct shape, and you have that nice Chevrolet badge in the center, along with that gold band underneath that. It is a little bit on the loose side, but that's because it does actually work with the steering wheels. So I always like how Maisto includes the working steering on their models for sure. And then of course you can see the pedals down there as well. Kind of hard to focus, but there you have it right there. And then you also have decent detailing on the door panels as well. They have the same kind of line texture in the middle that you would see on the real life vehicle, and Maisto also molded in the window cranks and the door handles as well, which have a nice kind of three-dimensional look to them, in spite of the doors being all just one single color. Maisto, I think, did do a good job in that sense, but definitely I think some more fine detailing would have looked nice in here, along with maybe having some more color in here as well. The seat looks good though. It is the single bench seat that you would see on the real life vehicle, although I think you could get individual like the bucket seats, I think, as an option. But this version does have the bench seat, as you can see right here. It does have a nice overall look and shape to it, I think. As far as the underside goes, not a whole lot of detail down here. You do have the chrome exhaust system, which I think looks decently done. And then you have the molded in plastic spare tire. I wish Maisto actually went with maybe like an actual spare wheel and tire, because sometimes in the past they did do that where you had like an actual spare wheel and tire that you could fully remove from the model. I wish Maisto maybe went the extra mile with this and did that, but I guess they had to save on costs in some way. And you can see some of the engine detail on the underside, which is a cool touch. And even some of the exhaust components down there as well in chrome. So I think the underside is decent for a Maisto model for sure. So if you're a fan of the square body pickup trucks, or if you're a fan of, just classic trucks in general, or just pickup trucks in general, or, American cars from the 70s, etc., really. This is, I think, a good model to consider getting for your collection of 1/18 scale vehicles. I think Maisto definitely could have improved on some of the areas of this model, such as better detail on the engine, maybe some more, color and better fine detail on the interior. But aside from that, the build quality, I think, is really good. The paint looks really well applied to this model. And I think this model is pretty much everything you can anticipate for a newer released Maisto 1/18 scale model, and that you're getting, I think, good value for your money. I think as long as you're getting this model for a price that you're comfortable with paying, you're getting a solid model to add to your collection of 1/18 scale vehicles for sure. I'm definitely happy that I got this for my collection at the good wholesale price that I was able to get it for, or good wholesale club price, I should say, from Sam's Club. So yeah, feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on this pickup truck model, or with your thoughts on my video in general. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.